We're back. IJ Subito Inter 3-0 winners over Lazio yesterday in what can only describe as the atmosphere of a friendly at a half-empty Olympico. We'll take the win. I'm your host, Andrew. I've got Jay here with me. We're going to break it all down for you, but more importantly, we're going to preview the Coppa Italia final on Wednesday. Jay, how are you, sir?
Doing well. Looking forward to, but also dreading the climax of this season of football, rather, with Arsenal poised to claim a continental uh, or a double with the Champions League and Premier League title. So that aside, it's been great, but I am somewhat dreading the inevitable.
What do you think are the odds Arsenal beats PSG 5-0 for us?
Probably 1 in 6 trillion, but more
We
likely than us beating PSG 5-0.
we received a black swan event last year. I was reading that the English commentators during the match yesterday brought up the 5-0 like 3 times. It's like awesome.
That's right. I mean, I said this at the time, and I don't want to veer this episode into a negative direction because we're here to talk about good things, but I
Wait,
said it
wait,
at the time.
are you accused of being negative at times?
Unbelievably so. I mean, I couldn't believe it either, but some people seem to be of the opinion that my opinions are more negative than others. But like I said it at the time, that 5-0 will do, is not going away in the psyche of the general footballing public anytime soon, right? It's going down in like trivia questions at local bars for the next 50 years. You know what I'm saying? Uh, that's what that's the yardstick that people will compare PSG to if Arsenal happen to win. Well, this is a PSG that won the last final 5-0, and Arsenal managed to keep them to a clean sheet in a commanding 2-0 victory, whatever. Yeah, it's just, it's not gone away.
Well, off to a roaring start here, setting the right tone for the episode. Let's get into the match yesterday. I don't have a ton to say about this thing. Always nice to beat Lazio. eh, I don't know what the historical record is, but obviously we all remember last year when we drew them 2-2 and Pedro scored a brace. So it's still some fresh scars for that. So it feels good to beat them. And sorry, this was as straightforward of a win as you'll get away in this league. It especially helps when Romagnoli picks up a red card in the second half and pretty much finishes this thing off. But when the Scudetto is locked up and the season in the league is effectively over, what I like to use these matches for is like pick at what's new and what's different. What did we experiment with? What did we try? And that's not always the case. I mean, I've seen us play out the string with Conte before, where he basically just played all our starters for the rest of the season, no variety to it, and it was incredibly boring, frankly. But Kivu, with that youth mindset, is more willing to experiment, and we saw a few unique things yesterday. So I want to focus my energy on the unique things rather than talk about how great Lautaro was or anything like that. So when you get the lineup, there are probably two interesting decision points. The first is the Sucic at Regista decision. So we go with a bit of an unusual midfield trio for us based on availability of Hakan being out and Zelensky being rested. So you get this Sucic at Regista look. Obviously, he scored a fantastic goal. Full credit for that. But Jay, what did you think about Sucic in the actual position itself? His defensive shift, his passing. What do you make of it?
Yeah, it's hard to gauge because the moments were there, especially in the first half when he was playing with them, simply a better midfield, right? Barella and or Barella was there to act as like the general or one of the generals in midfield. If I'm not mistaken, Barella started in that reducer position, I think. But we certainly lost some control to a degree when Sucic took over that linchpin role, and I don't want to say he disappeared because that's a little bit harsh, but as you would expect naturally when he retreated a bit into that deep line position, his influence in the game waned a little bit, and you saw him a little bit less and less as time went on. But obviously, there are other factors involved in that, such as essentially Lazio not really trying as much, and us just not really committing tons of people forward or not really camping up high, right? We were pretty happy to try and hit Lazio on the break, and Mkhitaryan was the key uh, component, the key driver of that with his surging runs after we pick up the ball or win the ball back, pass it out to Mkhitaryan, and he'd bring the whole attack forward. So there was less of a role for Sucic to play. So I don't want to discredit him for that, but at the same time, players like Hakan, right? Even if it is a fairly dull or non-competitive affair, they have a way where they're always seen, they're always visible. I'd say even Zielinski, to a lesser degree, has some of that, but Sucic is still fighting that, especially in that regista position, which I don't think is probably ever going to be his strong suit. I think that there's a certain kind of metronomic factor that the role requires that I don't think is Suchic's natural strength or inclination to play that way. So overall positive for sure. And like I said, the key thing is that the moments, I the goal, are well on his side.
Yeah, good call on kind of the realignment of the midfield and Barella initially starting there. Uh, I don't know if I have anything to add on Sucic. I'll just say that overall, I'd say this was a good enough first season for him at Inter. This is a player you're going to expect some growth from next season. Like you're going to need more out of him. But first year in the league, first year in a step up a competition, generally happy with how he performed. He's never going to be somebody who's a significant contributor in the attack. I don't think he did score a couple of wonder goals of the season, but overall, I do think his attacking play is fairly limited. I mean, he's definitely great on the ball. He's great passing, but it's kind of reminds me of a worse Mkhitaryan in many ways. Worse Mkhitaryan from prior seasons, not this season's version of Mkhitaryan. So we'll see what he develops into. The talent's there. I do have concerns about like where we're going to play him. He had one really nice recent performance as a left center midfielder. He struggled in that position earlier in the year. Obviously, Barella's not going anywhere. You mentioned you don't really see him as a regista long term. So bit of an awkward fit we're gonna have to figure out. It does seem like we're interested in signing a new left center mid. So we'll see what happens. But I'd say good first overall season from Sucic. Not great, but enough for there to be promise moving forward. Let's talk about Diouf, who's also in his first season here. We've talked about him a lot on the podcast because he is a transfer miss. He's more or less a waste at 25 million. I see people trying to reinvent that after his performance at right wing back yesterday. Nothing has changed for me where I'm still thoroughly unconvinced by this guy. And while it's great that he had a decent performance and he had a hockey assist and he looked okay and all that, it's just the situation when you have a team that we are able to relentlessly attack the way we're able to just go at Lazio, who weren't putting in all that much of an effort, to be honest. They were saving themselves with Coppa. You're not asking enough of Diouf. You don't have to ask that much of Diouf, and as a result, he can look good. So for me, I still want him gone next season. This match isn't like I don't want to reinvent him and him be our, reserve right wing back next season. I think he's just a very limited use player who, if you're struggling to round out a squad, it might be a useful piece as the last man on the bench. And like I said, he did play well yesterday. He was very involved in the attacking phase of the game. I don't have anything bad to say about him, but it just wasn't enough to convince me otherwise about what has been a poor season.
Yeah, I don't know what to make of Diouf because on one hand, I have liked some things that I've seen from him. We've I guess Diouf was somewhat of a joke for the first half of the season. Obviously, barely featured at all. Jokes were made about him being the quote unquote accelerator, and that people made fun that the only reason we bought him was because he had a really high accelerations per 90 stat, and no one knew what the fuck that meant. Uh, but he kind of gave a good showing of himself in a handful of appearances, and also got a handful of starts and cameos in some easier games uh, against Venezia and the Coppa, for example, and here and there. And he was able to showcase his strengths, which is firstly directness and willingness to run with the ball. He will. He's a very attacking player, uh, and he's got obviously a good sensibility to him when it comes to carrying the ball. But that's kind of that's kind of all we've seen so far. And while that in itself is really refreshing in our team, where we've mentioned this so often that we're really devoid of exactly that. And we say Mkhitaryan is still so useful despite his age and his heavily waning quality, because he's the only one who can do that. He's the only one who can pick up the ball, surge forward 20, 30, 40 yards and lay it off and, get involved in the attack. Diouf certainly has that, but at the same time, while it might be unfair to say so, I feel like we just haven't seen enough other qualities to really convince that there is much outside of that niche skill, you know? Um, yeah, much outside of that niche of dribbling and running with the ball. I We haven't seen much sample size of any ball retention, of any defensive quality, any uh, physicality, any real like possession, recycling, and ball. What do you call? What am I trying to say here? Like kind of passing technique, essentially, or range of passing rather. He tends to play simple 1-2s and then go for the dribble and play little layups and stuff. But beyond that, we haven't really seen much of his passing, right? So to that end, it's been a small sample size, but at the end of the day, we just haven't seen enough to really convince, I think, anyone that he could play as like a long term viable LCM option. I think that's probably the case with Kivu as well, where Kivu probably doesn't see enough from this guy in training, and that's why he plays him kind of off to the side as like a makeshift fullback, or a wing back rather, who can just utilize his what strengths he does have, and I guess his lack of other attributes might be somewhat masked by that, by him playing in that role in the system.
Yeah, and I do think a lot of the reason why some Inter fans walk away impressed with this guy is, to your point, because of our, I don't want to call it our desperation, but our thirst for like athleticism in the squad and our complete lack of it. And while Diouf is a highly athletic player, he's also just a mediocre footballer. And if we had just a few more proper athletes in the squad who were also talented players, then no one would be willing to tolerate Diouf. So credit because he has a skill set we're lacking. But overall, I just don't ever see this guy carving out a meaningful impact at Inter. I can already see this guy being stuck in an endless loan cycle where next year we loan him out to pick your team, Genoa, Sassuolo. He doesn't get enough minutes. He ends up going on a loan abroad. We've all seen this one too many times before. So I'm not expecting much from him. I'm glad he's getting minutes though. Like this stuff is important, and this is why Kibu's kind of a breath of fresh air as far as managers go. Like when you're playing a completely meaningless match, like let's give some of these guys opportunities. Even give the cap to the Primavera kid in the last 10 minutes of the fixture. Just it's the stuff you want to see in low stakes games, and that's exactly what this was. It was a low stakes game where neither team was trying particularly hard to win it, and because of our superior ability, we happened to more or less thrash Lazio.
But did we start the game with a lineup too strong? Do you reckon we started with Taram Lautaro and Barella, for example?
I don't think so. I have no concerns with the lineup. The Pio unavailable due to injury. I understand that, I think he did a great job giving Bonnie and Taram 45 minutes each, perfect amount of time. You can't roll out a team of 11 Primavera players as much as I'd like that. You need to mix in some experience with the youth to put the youth in a position to succeed. I think he did that pretty well in the midfield, where he gave Barella the largest chunk of time. Who cares about Mkhitaryan? And then he rotated in for Tazy and Sucic. So I don't have any concerns. I do think we're going to see a much heavier La- Lazio lineup on Wednesday as we look forward to the Coppa. Obviously, Zaccagni didn't play. Isaksen is someone who's probably going to start against us midweek. So I guess from that standpoint, did we get away with less rest than Lazio? I think it's a fair argument, but really the key positions I wanted to see some players rested, we got. And I love that we got Martinez another start. I don't know if he's going to start the Copa final. I don't know if we're going to automatically defer back to summer, but I want to get that guy as many minutes as possible. We've done a good job with that recently. The past month or so, he's definitely seen an uptick in starts. So I really don't have complaints about the lineup we rolled out there. Bisek, I imagine he's fine. I know he picked up a bit of a knock, but it looked like he just got hit in the balls and he was fine afterwards. A little fair play after it, but he seems fine. So I think we pretty much handled the situation well. You can't really give footballers 2 weeks off without doing any, game like activity, even at this late in the season. So I don't know. Was there something in the lineup that upset you yesterday or concerned you?
Bodo Glimt. No. Look, I wanted to quickly jump on Joseph Martinez's performance. Let me ask you just a random question. Like, if you take away the fucking absurdity that is this whole Vicario situation, the idea that we pay like what are the rumored fees for Vicario? Like 15 million, 10 million plus, right?
I saw 20 million.
Yeah, yeah. I thought I saw something around that. I was like, nah, that can't be right. But yeah, 15 million plus, 20 million for a guy who is firstly gets injured pretty often for a keeper. Vicario is someone who's good for like some insane reflex saves once every like 3 games, but otherwise he's a bit of a retard. And he's, it's no doubt exacerbated by the fact that he's spent the last couple of years at this absolute basket case of a club, Tottenham, where no player can really look good. No player can really succeed under those conditions. But to spend 20 million on Vicario is just one of the most sickening rumors I've heard in such a long time for this club, where, we've been largely supportive or largely in agreement with the way the club's been managed over the last, well, 6, 7 years at this point, maybe even 8 years if you go back to Spalletti. But seriously, Vicario would just be a, you know, abject, terrible waste of money, right? But that's all pretense here for my question, which is and I know you're aligned with me on the Vicario signing potentially, on the potential Vicario signing rather, but putting away the distaste of 20 million on Vicario, how much, well, give me like a rating out of 10 in terms of how much you actually want Joseph Martinez to be the starter? Is it purely because we don't want Vicario and because Summer's so bad, or because there's actually something in Martinez that you see that really warrants that starting into goalkeeper position? Now, this is, keep in mind, a famous post, right? Some of the players to have held this role. Do we need to really list them all? Handanovic, Cesar, Toldo, at least in our kind of tenure as fans, and obviously before then, the likes of Zenga, etc. This is a famous, famous post normally occupied by a long-standing custodian. And even if Martinez isn't that, is he still otherwise worthy of the post?
The answer is probably no. It- I called this season of Inter goalkeeping the worst of my lifetime. Summer was horrible. Martinez would hold a special place as the worst starter we have going into a season in my Inter fandom, and that's more of a testament to the quality keepers we've had in past seasons than any indictment on him. But I'm also realistic about our situation, which is when you have as limited of a transfer budget as we do, are we going to go out and spend big money on a keeper? Is that what we want to do here? buying Martinez for 14 million or whatever was a mistake. He looks like a perfectly fine goalkeeper. I've never had a bad thing to say about him in a match. He's never committed a howler that has led directly to a goal. I like the way he's quick off his line. He does a good job in these sweeper keeper type moments. He, he's been very reliable for us. He has not wowed us. He has not won us matches with saves. But when you compare his performances to the likes of Summers this past season, it's hard to argue. I mean, he's been the better keeper, and if you can win a Scudetto with Summer putting in one of the worst goalkeeping performances imaginable for the better part of a season, there's really no reason to expect that we can't win a Scudetto with Martinez as our starting goalkeeper. And I think that's a reasonable benchmark to head into next season with. We can probably win a Scudetto with Martinez as our starting goalkeeper. And when we're talking about the 40, 45 million post transfer budgets, it's just hard to wrap your head around spending more money on a keeper. But I know that's not your question. Your question is Martinez individually, does he convince me? And I still don't have enough data to give you a good answer. The best I can say is he doesn't concern me. Like I feel at ease when he's back there. I'm not worried. This isn't Daniele Padelli back when he was subbing in for Handanovic and he was, fumbling every ball, couldn't catch it cleanly. Like Martinez is definitely a level above that. If he wasn't at Inter, I do believe he'd be starting for other teams in this league. That's as about as big of a compliment as I can pay him. So am I excited about the idea of him being our goalkeeper next season? No, but I think it's a necessary evil at this point. Maybe you bring back Stankovic from Venezia and you do this deputization. I don't like that idea. I'm just throwing it out there. As much as I'd love to see us go and spend big money on a keeper, I'm not goalkeeper guy. I don't have targets for you. Obviously, you've talked about the Vicario links. Not a good idea. This Mata kid on Lazio looks phenomenal, but I imagine Lazio aren't going to sell him. Caprile is someone who perhaps we were interested in at some point, but I really feel like his star has kind of faded and he's not nearly as highly regarded as he once was. I don't have a good answer for you. I don't know what we do with this position, but I do hope we start Martinez for the rest of the season, or at least a good chunk of it. I guess we have 3 games left. I'd like to see him start at least 2 of them because I want to see this guy more to understand what we have.
Yeah, I think that's a really good way of putting it, rather than maybe even analyzing Martinez himself, but as you said, within the context of like a title race, if we could win a Scudetto this comfortably with a goalkeeper this bad, by by definition, by default, we should be able to at least contest or contend for a Scudetto next season with the goalkeeper who's at least this season been a lot better. A goalkeeper who is more reliable than what we've had this season. I'm still not convinced in that I still see a lot of random just moments of heroism. That's probably the wrong word, of trying to be a hero. I feel like he tries to do too much. Uh, I've seen him come out too often for high balls and kind of like flap at them, often miss. Yesterday, in like the 60th minute, I made note of the time. There was a moment when Lazio had like an attack down the right flank, and that was the one where Carlos Augusto kind of cleared off the line. Uh, I think it was Pedro had a Pedro came out and was it Pedro? Whatever.
I
Anyways,
It wasn't Pedro.
but the Lazio attacker had a good chance. Had a one-on-one with Martinez, who came off his line, and from that kind of narrow angle, put a past Martinez, and Carlos Augusto, kind of recovering, managed to basically block the ball from entering the net. Like, there's no danger there if Martinez just doesn't come out. You know what I mean? Like the guy's got no angle to shoot. The only way you get it past the goalkeeper at that point, if the goalkeeper's coming out of his line and you manage to sneak the ball past him. But if the goalkeeper just remains at his near post holding his line, then you literally have no angle to score from. And there are these kind of small moments like this that I see a lot from Martinez that lead me to believe he's maybe a little bit less reliable than many Inter fans think, and that this may be exposed in a full 38 game season, 50 game season. But at the same time, ultimately, look, I do think it's worth the risk at this stage, considering that the other alternatives in relation to the finances we have available are just not really enticing either. You spoke about a $40 million euro budget. It's more like 25 because 15 million is going to be redeemed on a kanji. So that means we have a 25 million euro budget and we're going to spend what, 20 million of that on Vicario? Like, come on, it cannot happen. And we just don't have that money to spend on a goalkeeper right now. That's why I think these whole Stankovic rumors are doing the rounds. But
All right, we're not doing this again.
but yeah, the point is,
It was
you're right.
Isak who had the shot that Augusto cleared off the line, by the way.
Mm-hmm. But yeah, you get my point.
I do,
And I
I
agree
do.
with that it's not a priority position right now. So look, we'll wait and see how it goes. I too hope that he can start every game, including the Coppa final, until the end of the season. I don't think he will start it. I just think it's kind of suspicious timing that Kibu chose to bench him for this one, or bench Sommer for this game rather. I think it bodes poorly for Martinez, and but hopefully after Sommer's send off, we can see. But these rumors don't convince me. Like these rumors, like management is strongly considering giving Martinez another chance. Like what? Like if we're going to
These
give
are
him
the
another
rumors
chance,
we've been floating to the media for the past like 6 months to try if we are serious about Vicario to like drive down his price by saying, "Hey, we don't need this guy. We have Martinez instead." We've like just desperately flung ourselves at
exactly,
Vicario, and now
exactly.
we're in a weird spot. But I will say, as we look forward to this Coppa Italia final, I actually do think Martinez gets the start. I had a similar foreboding feeling to you when we played Kyrie a few weeks back, and it was on a Friday before Como, and Martinez got the start. It's like, oh, great. This means Summer's going to be playing against Como. And Kibu surprised me, and he played Martinez in back to back games. So I'm expecting something similar here. I hope Martinez gets the start and Summer gets his send off game in the last home game of the season. I don't remember who the last home game of the season against. That's one fixture too far for me. Is it Verona or something? But anyway, I do think Martinez will get the start. Now, I think you'll agree it's impossible to glean anything from this victory over Lazio and apply it to the final. It's going to be a much different game. It's going to be a much more tense atmosphere. This is a game Lazio's season in many ways comes down to they need to win this thing to get Europa League qualification. They might miss out on Europe entirely if they don't win this match. So we're going to see another level from them. And then of course for us, I mean, the lineup's going to look much different. So I guess how concerned are you with Lazio? I mentioned they've given us trouble historically at times. You like last year's 2-2 draw. With that being said, we've also had some good dumpings of them recently. We beat them, what was it, 6-0 last season. It like this is a game we should win. Like I can't give you a single football reason we lose this match other than we come out and we play poorly. Because if you look at our recent form versus theirs, if you look at our players versus theirs, like everything points to this being a spot for us to win. It's just it's a cup final and anything could happen. And I hate to play the any given Sunday card, but really that's the only reason I can see us losing this game.
Yeah, I'd agree. I've kind of been waiting for Sarri's Lazio to impress me for quite a while now, but in between the nonsense with the ultras and obviously De
The
Laurent, not
transfer embargo.
yeah, not De Laurentiis, what's his name? Lotito. Uh it just hasn't taken off for me. Sarri is a Scudetto winning coach. He won the Europa League with Chelsea a couple of years ago. This is a guy who was also hired to replace Allegri at Juventus, right? So he's not a he's not like a poor manager. This is not like an Italiano or like a Palladino. This is a guy with genuine credentials, and yet I just don't see that translating at this Lazio for whatever reason. I was kind of expecting Sarri to take Lazio. This is a few years ago, but expecting to take them to like a kind of challenging for top four, pushing for like a top four position consistently, kind of level of performance. But I'm not seeing that, and so I don't really know what to make of them. I agree with you that last night's game was very much like a write off, and that they cared even less than us. Uh, and therefore, you saw it in the lineups where they probably rotated even more than us. And maybe that'll come back to bite us a little bit. You'd hope not, despite the fact that we've played a lot of games this season and that there might be some leggy players out there. At the end of the day, it's still or a good 4 days rest or something like that, 5 days maybe. Uh, the players should be able to handle it. In other words, I I think as long as we avoid situations where we have where we get where we can let Lazio have some fast breaks with players like Isaacson running directly at Bastoni, for example. That's the only thing that really worries me because I do think even yesterday there were moments where you had like Noslin in positions to attack our wide centre backs directly, and that's not some. Oh, that's the exact situation you want to avoid in a 3-5-2 situation.
Yeah, I mean, you don't need anything more than 2 functioning eyes to see how much we struggled yesterday. It's even when we went down to when Lazio went down to 10 men, they suddenly became more dangerous, dragging us out of position, and I do think Isaksen was a big reason why he was quite dangerous when he came on, and like I said, I expect him and Zaccagni to be starting, and that's gonna make a big difference in what Lazio looks like in the final third. So I agree. I mean, this is definitely a team I'm afraid of on the counter a little bit. We obviously play higher up the pitch than we have in past years with Kibu, so that's the one area of concern. But overall, I can't lie and say I'm losing sleep over this match. I want to win it. But I just think we're going to win it. I can't sit here and be a doomer. I can't sit here and tell you, watch out for Pedro while being serious about it. This is a game we need to win. This is a game we should win. So I guess you can put me down for it's a cup final. I just don't think we're going to, blow them out 3-0 or something like that. Give me, in Irfan's spirit, a cagey 2-1 win. Lautaro, of course, Taram, and Pedro for old time's sakes.
Yeah, I'll go for I was going to say 1-0 to us, but I can see this. I can see this going down to extra time and penalties potentially. I don't know what it is. I feel like there'll be some degree of nervousness in the game, some degree of controversy for whatever reason. Maybe like another big refereeing decision, maybe a sending off here or on one side or the other. But I don't know. I don't get the feeling that it's going to be an easy game. But at the same time, actually, there's like a 1%, maybe 5% part of me that thinks that it might just be like a repeat of of yesterday's game. We just kind of take the initiative and essentially blow them out of the water because I think that this Lazio kind of struggles to really find a motivation for themselves. Again, I've mentioned like the situation with the ultras and who I think are sitting out the game, by the way, or is that only yesterday's game? Uh,
All I heard was they're giving tribute to Pedro as like his last game, but I think they might be sitting out the game as well. Now that you mention it,
yeah, I kind of assumed it was just for yesterday's game, but I swear I remember reading that the Lazio ultras will not be at the Coppa Italia final, which goes to show pretty much the entire mentality of what's wrong with the club. If it is true, if it's not true, then I'll eat my words. But your club makes it to a Coppa Italia final, and you don't want to show up. You want to like protesting. Someone is more important than that. Then it kind of goes to show why there's that age old saying that for Roma and Lazio, beating one another is more important than winning other games or finishing higher in the league. They'd rather have a season where they finish 16th and beat their rivals twice rather than finish like fifth. With a respectable point tally. Um, but that's kind of what I see from Lazio. So I can see them falling flat on the occasion without the support of the fans, without the intensity, with the squad itself just kind of always being up and down throughout the season in terms of how often and how much they seem to turn up for random games. So yeah, a small part of me thinks it'll go that way, but realistically, I do think it'll be fairly cagey as well. So I'll go 1-0 or 2-1 to us, and I'll give goals to Lautaro and Thuram, and 1-2. Let's give it to the future Milan centre back, Mario Hila.
If they can even afford to buy him after they miss out on Champions League football again. Roma actually play Lazio next Serie A match day, which feels way too late in the season for that kind of derby. But maybe we'll catch Lazio looking ahead to Roma. You never know.
Maybe, maybe.
Uh, okay, well, we'll wrap up there. We'll be back at some point to recap the Coppa final against Lazio. Sterling has promised us an appearance, so for those of you looking for Sterling, definitely check out that episode. All right,
There are
well,
people. There are
go
people
ahead.
looking for Sterling.
There are YouTube commenters explicitly saying enough of Jay's negativity. Give me more Sterling, and I tend to agree with them.
Enough of Jay's negativity. Give me Sterling's negativity. He's
Sterling is one of the
just as
few.
negative as I am.
Sterling is one of the few Inter fans I know who strongly predicted a Scudetto preseason. He put all his faith in Kivu, so I give Sterling big props for that.
Fair enough. Fair enough.
All right, well, Jay, please do the honor.
I can't believe I have to say this, but do I have to say Forza PSG?
I believe yes. Forza PSG hoping for a PSG 6-0 win.
That's right. What even is the final? I'm so out of it.
You're asking the wrong guy, man.
All right. Let's leave it there. Well, Forza Inter, let's get this domestic double, and then let's sort out the mess that is next season after we win this double.
I guess we'll go with that. Catch you all later.